Welcome to Figures Podcast. In today's episode, we will be talking to Tony Tseng, a serial entrepreneur with many successes under his belt. I am your host, Chris Jones. This is Tony Tseng. Tony Tseng and I have known each other for a really long time. What I'd really like to do, Tony, is kind of talk about your entrepreneurial experience.
Sure.
And, where you started out and kind of where you ended up.
Sure, sure.
So can we start out with a brief introduction and then dive into, kind of the history?
Again, Tony Tseng, originally from Taiwan, born in Taiwan. Moved here when I was, I think, 4. Thought I was always going to do the corporate path. Good student, high SATs, went to UCLA. Coming out of UCLA, my entire path and my entire journey was going to be corporate. Looked at Lehman, looked at the Wall Street jobs, ended up getting a job over at PIMCO, Pacific Investment Management. And that's all I had in mind. Really no huge entrepreneurial spirit. Had some of it growing up, but in my mind, my dad was an entrepreneur and, he was always kind of hustling around. And I always thought, you know what, I'm going to do it the corporate route. Mm-hmm. Go to college, get a good corporate job, move up the corporate ladder. So went to PIMCO, did pretty well there. Within a couple of years, got recruited to Capital Group, competitor up in LA, did the Capital Group. And at the time, I felt like I was doing really well. Well enough to go out and buy myself a used but new to me Porsche. So I thought I was killing it. And until my buddy from college, who I had met, was selling computers out of his apartment, told me how much he was making. Nice. So the funny story was, got my car, kind of showing it off to him, pulled up, he's in his apartment, building computers literally in his apartment. And he told me how much he was making building computers in his apartment. Mm-hmm. And this was 3 days after I got the car, I quit my job. I swear to God, I quit my job, went to him and said, let's do this. I'll help you grow this, apartment selling computer job, where I was shirt and tie in the TAPS program at PIMCO, the path that I always dreamed of. But the guy was making double my salary, wearing flip-flops and shorts in his apartment in Westwood. So literally went to his house and said, let's go. Let's do this together. Because he wanted me to help. He goes, okay. So from there, went to his house. And so went to his house every day instead of the corporate job. And we started, and literally the way we started marketing was we started marketing home-built computers on AOL. Okay. Free ads, not even paid ad. It was a free chat room type ad. Mm-hmm. We posted these computers. We build these computers and ship them to people across the country. Then we started spending a little money on advertising in the Recycler, some local newspapers, started selling out of some local places. My parents had a warehouse in Gardena, had some extra warehouse space, so we took over a little of the warehouse space. And I won't bore you with the computer side, but fast forward, we just ended up being a decent sized wholesaler. Okay. We're wholesaling computers, wholesaling computer parts, opened up a couple retail stores, and eventually he went full retail, which I had no interest in doing retail. I thought retail was just too much work for me. Mm-hmm. I went full wholesale and teamed up with a new set of guys to do all wholesale. Okay. And we did wholesale for quite a bit of time until that company was bought out by one of our biggest suppliers. Okay. So perfect. Then I was out of a job. Okay. Right. Right. So now the question was, do I go back to corporate because this was my little run, fun little run, or do I find something different? So at the time I had just purchased a house and needed to pay the rent. So my buddy from college, who was a great guy, ex-lifeguard, at the time I didn't consider him the sharpest tool in the shed, was making some great money selling mortgages at a 125 refi shop, second mortgage shop. So I said, I'll give that a try. Yeah. Got involved in that. Big company, a couple thousand employees, started hawking some mortgages, making decent money. Then I was always drawn to the tech side. And so the way I ended up kind of being more entrepreneurial on that side was I got to know their tech side because our computers were always broken. So I was fixing people's computers because the IT guys were always too slow. So the IT guy, the head of IT came out and goes, hey, thanks for help. I really appreciate you helping. Just don't mess anything up. I'm like, no, I got it. So went to his back room. He kind of gave me some more tools to help guys. And I said, what's that pile of 60 computers in the corner? He's like, those don't work. Sure. I'm like, they're broken? Because I need computers. So I said, you know what, give me some time. Give me a day. So I took those computers, took 60 broken computers, made 40 working ones, and because swapped some parts out. And the owner found out and pulled me aside and said, what the hell? That was really cool. Saved me a ton of money. I'm like, yeah, this is bad. Piece of memory is bad. And so when that company got sold, the IT manager grabbed me and said, hey, you want to start a company together? This 2,000 person shop was sold and everyone splintered. Everyone started their own mortgage companies. And so everyone called him for IT support. He didn't have enough. So he was just him. He goes, why don't you and I be a partnership? You do the work, I bring on the business. I said, great. It was awesome. So I was the guy on my hands and knees installing computers 24/7, building computers at night, installing them in a day. And with these 2,000 people, you can imagine how many mortgage shops in Orange County that popped up. So we became the IT guy. They bought their software for me. And that was probably the most fun I ever had in my life. Because it was very tactile. You built computers. You had great margins. I'd go in there and I'd be installing computers that day. I was probably working 7 days a week, probably 12 to 14 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
Just because there's so much demand. And then for me, if there's money to be gotten, I'm going to go get it. I don't want to sleep on it because who knows how long this little bubble is going to last. And that was kind of the start of my entrepreneurial side. And ever since then, I haven't had a job. I always do wonder if I stuck with the corporate route, what would have happened. I guess you'll never know. I obviously don't regret the results of being an entrepreneur, but maybe 9 companies later, 3 or 4 not so good, 5 or 6 pretty good. I'm kind of finally retired.
Well, that's pretty good batting average. I mean, you can't argue with that, right?
And you try to limit your downside, right? The ones that don't go well, you got to identify them well early and be willing to, cut bait and move on.
Sure.
The ones that do go well, you have to be back to the computer building days, being willing to put in every ounce of energy while it's going well.
Sure.
Who knows how long that lasts. And that's one thing I found in being an entrepreneur and being around people who started businesses, that you have to be prepared to be different. I've gone from advertising to computers to mortgage banking to, and for me, it's all a business is a business. It could be any industry.
Sure.
Right? To me, I'm more of an ops guy, and understanding how to maximize profits. Keep your costs in check, and understanding that kind of the goal of the company is really important. And so I don't care what kind of company it is.
Sure.
I've consulted in lots of different kind of companies.
So that's actually a really great lead in to my next question. Sure. One of the topics is resiliency in business. We want to really understand, situations where you maybe had to be extra resilient. Obviously we're dealing with a pandemic now, and businesses are having a hard time adapting to the new normal. Sure. And that might mean remote, working. It might mean, different software solutions. There's all different things. But can you talk to me about some experiences where you had to kind of, with limited resources, pull everything together?
Sure. I always felt, and I've always said, that there's more opportunity when things are bad than things are good. When things are great, everyone's doing great. You have very little competitive advantage in a great industry or a great market. And I always, when I have got into businesses, I hate chasing, like for instance, right now, real estate. Real estate here in Boise is super hot. Everyone's becoming a real estate investor or developer, or I'm going to build a spec home, or I'm buying investment property. And it does work. Real estate's a great market, but we all learned back in the 09 market, a lot of speculation, a lot of risk, and a lot of people with less of risk are willing to put their credit, willing to put some assets out there to leverage their returns.
Sure.
Now, I often run from, I try, maybe too often, but when everyone's running towards one direction, it scares me more than it excites me. Because just like when the stock market crashed, when you're the guy who's bagging your groceries talking about Cisco stock, it's time to sell your stock.
Right.
And no offense to grocery baggers, but when everyone's doing something, usually there's dumb money in it. And that's what I found. But real estate had a lot of dumb money in there. When I had friends who were, he owned a food car truck and he did really well, but he owned 15 houses. I said, how do you own 15 houses? Well, they have these loans now that you don't need any down payment, no income, no asset. Credit, no asset, the entire. And so when I started seeing guys like that owning 15 different houses, half of which he's never seen, it scares me, right? And those are the signs.
Yeah, as it should, right?
So I actually like adversity, because if there's adversity in a certain market or certain situation, I see opportunity. If something's harder than the average thing to do, to me, there's more opportunity to be had.
Sure.
Yeah. So throughout my career, I always I've taught my son, I've taught the people I do business with, is that if it doesn't break at least 3 or 4 times, it's not worth doing.
Sure.
Every business, it's gotta feel like it's about to fail at least 3 or 4 times, or something's wrong. So
Sure.
I think adversity is just part of the game. I welcome it. I really do.
Well, let's talk about partnerships and financing in business.
Sure.
Obviously, whenever you're starting a new business, you need to be able to fund it.
Sure.
And have some runway. How, can you talk about that? And also, if you could incorporate some elements of the bootstrapping, right? Because a lot of people have to do that.
Yeah, and I've always been self-funded. We've looked at third-party funding and the control that you have to give up. Some of the venture guys, and now I'm a venture guy too. Now I actually invest in businesses. I appreciate what a venture guy is giving. They're putting in the seed money. They're putting all the money up front with this hopes and dreams of something could happen. So they do deserve a decent chunk oftentimes, especially on an early, young, immature product. I always say that everyone's got a great idea, but who can execute, who can get it funded, who can actually not only get it funded, execute, and actually run the business long term. Those are the most important parts. I mean, everyone sitting around the bar has some great ideas. How many times have you heard, I got a great app idea? Well, okay, go get it made, go get it funded, go get it produced. The idea is, I won't use the word worthless, is the least important part to me. The funding to me is one of the most important parts, and the execution. And I've always tried to self-fund. So I've grown our companies a little slower. I rather grow slower, and that's probably what held me back from some higher levels of success. And I'm not saying my way is right. I really wish that there's certain points in my career that I went out for secondary funding, got more funding so I can grow the business faster, capture more of the market at the time. I'm a little more conservative in my general nature, that I rather take a sure dollar than a 50-50 $10, because I'll make a lot of 100% dollars to hopefully make up for the 50-50 $10, whatever the percentage is. So, I've always gone the self-funded way or the partnership way.
Okay.
Strategic partners.
Sure.
Finding a partner within industry.
So let's talk about partnerships.
Okay.
What does that look like for you? How do you form them? Do you start out that way? Obviously, you mentioned that you have in the past,
Yes.
but can you?
So it's funny because I talk about this subject a lot with friends who come for me for advice starting businesses. And oftentimes there's a business where the 5 guys are in a room and they have this great idea. We're going to do this business. And everyone's like, okay, there's 5 of us. We're 20% owners each. And that's what my first thing is, stop. That's kind of not how it works. So I like to speak in analogies. And my analogy with that is, I see a business like a human being. There's the head, which is the brain. He's the person who knows the most. There's the arms. The arms is the guy who brings in all the different pieces. You have the contacts, you have the sourcing. And there's the legs, the guy who's driving that business, running it every day, pushing this business forward. And there's the wallet, the guy who's funding it. And to me, every business has these parts, and some businesses are more finance heavy. We're going to buy a lot of crap, we're going to sell a lot of crap. There's not much other pieces. There's a lot of businesses are operationally heavy. Now, but every business, most businesses in some shape or form have these pieces. And so for me, I sit down in a room and say, hey, listen, this is a great idea. Who's going to fund this? And you raise your hand. I got the $500,000. Right? You're the wallet. Someone else has the $500,000. Well, we don't need 2 fundings. Let's figure out who's going to provide the funding at the most reasonable, equitable for the company. Because we have to treat the company as its own entity. And one guy goes, well, 2 guys raise their hands. I can run it. Well, I don't need 2 guys running it. Who's more qualified? And sometimes you break it down, you realize when there's 8 guys in a room, 4 guys are just there with the same assets they bring to the situation.
Sure.
And you don't need redundancy. And I think part of that is, so part of forming the company and is having an early understanding of everyone's roles. And I think the most important thing I've ever given advice about is, you can be an owner, you can be an employee, you can be both. But everyone needs to be paid for what they do. And I think I see a lot of partnerships implode because people don't recognize that. You and I start a business. There's sales, there's operations. In the day one, you sell a bunch of stuff, I go install it. We love each other, we're doing great. Fast forward 5 years, you have a sales department that's out there selling. I'm running ops. You're on the beach entertaining clients, but I'm running 1,000 employees at the factory. So I get resentful. I can't believe Chris is at the beach again. I'm here working for our business. It's not fair. I've seen so many of those situations, and there's one quick fix from day one. There's a sales position. Sales manager is worth X. Ops manager is worth X. And we pay ourselves salaries from day one. If I choose not to be the sales manager, our company has already budgeted $8,000, whatever the number is a month or a year, to have a sales manager. I'm going to step out. I'm going to make sure I train someone, and now I'm going to go to the beach and sip my ties. I don't want to run ops. I'm going to hire someone to run ops, because you're in those two roles. You're the owner.
Then you're just drawing distributions essentially off your earnings, right?
Yeah. Just like when you own shares of IBM, you're an owner, so you get dividends, but you're not an employee.
Sure.
And so I think I see so many partnerships get really twisted because of that, just that general basic understanding of, just because you're an owner doesn't mean you have to work there. And just because you work there doesn't mean you have to be an owner. They're two separate roles. And so whenever I form partnerships, I say, okay, you want to run it, you're going to get a salary. Well, we're all partners. I didn't get paid until we make, no, you need to get paid today, because I don't want to get paid. I'm going to be the financing guy. I own a quarter of the company. I don't want a job. And to me, that the earlier you establish roles, the earlier you establish expectations, the longer this business relationship will last.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So, obviously, you've learned lessons along the way. I'm assuming that you've had a couple good partners and a couple difficult partners.
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
For sure. And then I think all the lessons I've learned brought me to this result. I realized, I had a real life, Tony, you're not here every day. And I said, well, I'm in charge of the front of the house. I'm in charge of this piece. You're in charge of that piece. Am I failing in any of my pieces? No, but I'm here every day. Well, stop. FaceTime means nothing to me, right? And when I run a company, I've had companies with 200-300 employees. I don't care if you're there. I care if you do your job well. Okay. And I think that's important, is that, some people are so into FaceTime. You're late. Where are you? And that's not productive. Sure.
So what's the biggest advice you think you could give an entrepreneur?
The biggest advice? Oh,
no pressure.
I think there's a lot of advice, right? Because the whole point is that every industry and every entrepreneur has different challenges depending on the industry and depending on how they're getting funded. I think an important part is being open to people that around you that are giving you good advice. I think I see too many guys who are dead set in their ways. They want to run it this way. They think they know the best way to run it. They think they have all the answers, and none of us do. I don't, you don't, none of us do. I mean, I learn to this day. I mean, every single business transaction I do, I end up learning something new. And even though I've dealt with a lot of successful guys who've done great things, if they're constantly learning, because our industry is everything's constantly evolving. Tech is constantly evolving. Even our workforce is evolving. The type of workers that are out there are evolving. I think you always have to kind of I always ask myself questions. I question myself, my own decisions constantly. Some people make a decision today and they're like, well, I've decided that's on the shelf. I'm not gonna think about that for 4 years. I like to reevaluate the decisions I make, because I made that decision today, it made sense today for the business, but 12 months later, it might not make sense.
Sure, that makes sense.
So being open to the fact that I can be wrong, and I am wrong often.
Sure.
I think it's important.
So let's talk about exits, right? And how, because that's a big part of your journey, right?
Yes.
And it's made you who you are.
Correct.
As an entrepreneur. So can you talk about your experience with that and how you got to the understanding that you have?
Yeah, the first company I ever sold, I had no idea how you value a company. And we had a company that we did remote, it was in the mortgage industry, we did remote notary signings. So I built this database of this is pre-web, really, pre-everything. So I built an access database with a bunch of notaries that everyone can hit, that we can rate the notary. So when our customers came in and said, I need a signing in Kentucky, because we're dealing with national lenders, we knew who in Kentucky was reliable. And it was like an internal Yelp, right? Nobody ranked them except for our employees. And based on if they're on time, if they're professional, we had this little ranking system. And so we built this like internal system where we knew I use longitude, latitude based on geographic regions, who to send as a notary. So when I was offered to someone, when they wanted to buy my company, a bigger, it was actually an escrow title company, I had no idea what to value it at. They wanted that service. We were so busy. They kind of wanted just preferential treatment, and finally said, "We want to buy your company. What do you want for it?"
Sure.
I had no idea how to value it. So I just threw out a number, and they're like, "Okay." I'm like, "Okay."
Left some money on the table.
I have no idea. At the time, it felt like a lot of money.
Sure.
And I just told myself, what number would I be happy with? And I sold it, and I'm like, again, what now? Right? I have a lot of what now times in my life where I'm like, well, that's over. What now? And then I started. First time I had a company was when I had a publicly traded company want to buy us, and part of buying us is they had to go raise a decent amount of money, and he took me as the CEO of my company. He took me on his road shows to kind of pitch why we're a good value and why we're good and why together we're a better value. And that education was incredible. Learning about EBITDA multiples and what things trade for and how do you value a company on cash flow or the assets, and that's where everything came more real to me.
So would you say you started building businesses around that understanding?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I became a guy who never wanted to own a company too long. Okay. I like to build and sell and build again and it's more of a. I feel fortunate to be in a situation where I can choose that because it's more fun. Building businesses is fun.
You like the startup phase.
Yeah. I mean, by year 3, I'm bored. I don't care what I'm doing, I'm bored. And so I want to get out. And just like any asset I have, I'm super excited to buy it, but once I have it, I kind of want to get rid of it. It's more fun buying than selling to me. It's more fun building than running. So, I don't think I've had a business longer than 5 years, maybe the longest.
Okay.
I like to put value in. And now these days, my biggest thing is I like seeing semi-mature businesses that have potential to increase their market value by tweaks that they already are just missing, by increasing market share, by being more efficient. And that's what I've done in the last 3 or 4 projects is not ground up starts. I've been fortunate because of some prior success. I've been fortunate enough to get phone calls, say, "Hey, Tony, come take a look at my business." And I take a look at it and be like, "Oh, okay. This is what I do. I do this, this, and this, and this." And they've invited me in to either invest, to buy a piece of it, or to have some equity deal will have some upside based on increased earnings. And that to me is the most fun. I don't, being older, being lazier, the build stage is still fun, just a lot more work, but the tweak stage is the most fun. Sometimes you see a company, you're like, oh my gosh.
Sure. So I really do want to focus around the specific aspect of you building a business with strong fundamentals, right? Because a lot of these people, whether you want to run a business for the long term or whether you want to look at a potential exit down the road, the same fundamentals apply.
Sure.
And those fundamentals drive valuation. So can we talk about that more expansively?
So for me, a big part of any business I want to get into is can you replicate, can you scale? And to create value, as we both know, a lot of people know, the stock market, businesses are valued a lot about not only what they're making is what their potential is, future value. And I think any business that first, if a business is not scalable, it's tough for me to get involved. Back to our earlier conversation, a restaurant. Now, if you have the intentions of franchising, going nationwide, that's one thing. But if you have a one-off mom and pop restaurant, it's not that exciting.
Sure.
It's just work. You bought yourself a job. And a lot of people are happy that they like this food service industry. They want to have a boss. They buy themselves a job. For me, building a company has to be like, for instance, the signing company, notary company, the national signing company that we spoke of earlier. That's super scalable. That is, if you build the right foundation, you have the right marketing, your market share, even 10% of the market share nationwide is a huge number. And then that valuation of that company can go higher and higher. Back then I didn't know that. Now I do in hindsight. So most companies I want to get involved with have a ceiling that is higher than I want to reach or I dare to reach.
You leave some run room for the next guy.
Yes.
Okay.
Because if it's not scalable, you end up selling to a unique type customer. The older guy, who I know a couple guys here who lost their jobs and they're buying jobs. A lot of owners of companies buy companies so they have a job. And that's what you end up selling. And those valuations are very arbitrary. Now, if you sell a scalable company, then you can start applying the multiples. You can start applying industry averages. You can start knowing what the value of your company is, and you can start working towards how do you increase the value of your company versus just making cash flow.
Sure.
And so you build your company differently because of that. You care about residual income. You care about monthly income. You care about, just the type of customers and type of business you go after is a little different. Gotcha. If you're looking to sell.
Sure. So economies of scale are really important, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, Tony, I really appreciate your time today. And as far as the audience goes, thank you for listening. It's been wonderful to be able to talk to Tony about his experiences. And, if you guys want to learn more, please hit us up and we'll definitely be willing to discuss this in a broader discussion.